And you are welcome once again. A final segment here for today is our health segment. And today we have a very interesting guest. You know her already. We are joined on the couch with Oluwatomi Ladega, like I have started calling you now, the superintendent pharmacist and supply chain lead at Drugstore, eHub Limited. And today I'm going to go right into it because I want to really juice this topic up. We're talking about antibiotics and the effects of overuse or misuse or abuse of antibiotics. Isn't that it?
Yeah.
Well, good to have you here today. So let's start.
Here.
Antibiotics are good, but what exactly are antibiotics? The name anti is a bit weird there. So what exactly are they?
Okay, anti is definitely an English word used against something. And so antibiotics are drugs that are used to treat or to kill bacteria, basically. So they work basically against bacteria.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
interesting. Are they the same thing as antifungal drugs, or
no?
The same? So they won't work for ailments that involve viral.
No.
They won't.
No, they won't. So antibiotics will just work specifically on bacteria. So when you have cold and you're using antibiotics, you're not doing anything.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's information that you need to know. Okay, so we would be prescribed antibiotics in what circumstances?
So basically, generally, if you have any form of bacterial infection, now the thing with the use of antibiotics currently is that people don't even know what kind of infection they have. So once you start having fever and having some other general symptoms, coughing, you hear people just say, oh, he needs antibiotics, or he has an infection. Now, when you have an infection, it could either be bacterial, it could be viral, right? So when you now use an antibiotic for a viral infection, you're not going to get any effect because antivirals will work for viral infection. Antibiotics will work for bacterial infection. So you would need to get tested, or a doctor will need to understand what the condition is. It's not enough for us or for people to, conclude that once there are any signs and symptoms, you generally use antibiotics because there is an infection. So all of them, so like you asked, antivirals, antibiotics, all of them are under the umbrella called anti-infectives, right? But then the specifics are now targeted towards what the infection is.
So if we are aware of these things and how the misuse could actually do us damage, why do we still have them attainable over the counter on shelves at pharmacists?
So I don't think we're even aware enough. We're not aware enough, and that's why there is a high rate of misuse of antibiotics. Usually you have people run to the pharmacy and say, give me antibiotics. I want Ampiclox, 2 tablets. Now, the thing with antibiotics generally, and even generally anti-infective or drugs generally, is that you have to complete the
certain dose.
Yes. And once you don't complete it, for example, antibiotics, if you use 1 or 2 or half the dose, what happens is that the bacteria is going to resuscitate.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And then you have the infection again, and then you go back to the hospital. By the time you're having to use and reuse the antibiotics, the bacteria is, understanding that, oh, you're coming against me. And what the bacteria does is that the gene mutates.
An immune system against the antibiotics themselves.
Yes. And then so
you need a stronger antibiotic to
God
so it just it's like a domino effect.
And
everything
then you're
just
using
gets bigger
it, you're
and
not getting the effect, you're going back to the hospital. The doctor will have to prescribe a stronger antibiotic.
Wow.
Your costs and all of that is coming into. What then also happens is that bacteria do not need to die or to reproduce before they can transfer their resistance to other bacteria.
Oh, wow.
So if I'm a bacterium and you're a bacterium and I'm passing by, I can transfer my resistance to you. Okay. Right? So if somebody else now get infected with your kind of bacteria and now uses the drug that they're supposed to use, you've built a resistance.
Already?
Already.
In that other patient?
Already.
Wow.
So you're using the drug and you're not getting the effect.
So these are how these things actually mutate from one organism to another if they're transmitted. And then we need different kinds of drugs or even stronger drugs to counter them. That's scary. What are the damages that the continuous use of antibiotics can do to the human body then?
Okay, so for children, or even generally, but most importantly in children, you have diarrhea and vomiting, right? You have those side effects. But more importantly, antibiotics would damage your kidneys with prolonged use.
And prolonged use would be what? Every month, every week,
Using it when it is not required. So you don't just wake up and say, now we're in festive season. You will have people go to the pharmacy and say because they have eaten all sorts, they just want to cleanse their systems. You hear all sorts at the pharmacy. And then when the pharmacist, so I would advise people to usually always, please listen to your pharmacist. When you go there, so you hear things like, oh, my sister had this symptom. She used this antibiotic. It worked for her. You're not my doctor. Please listen to them because they know better. And they're actually trying to prevent you or help you to get the needed aid that you need.
Wow.
So kidney damage is there. Diarrhea, vomiting is there. And then when you now need these drugs, you are not going to get the effect. You're now going to need to use something that's
called resistance, isn't it?
Yes, drug resistance. You now have to need to use something that is more, that is costlier, or doctors will now have to do prepare a cocktail of antibiotics for you.
Wow.
And remember that all of these things, like I always say, drugs are poisons.
Yeah.
Right.
So what alternatives then for antibiotics? If one wants to, let's just say, cleanse their system, if they suspect this and this, antibiotics are not suggested. What else could one do?
See, my darling.
Yes, I like it when you call me that.
We need to first of all stop self-medication. You don't just wake up and say you have this, that, so I'm going to use this, that. Okay. Go to the doctor or the pharmacist who would analyze you and give you the right drug for the ailment that is happening with you. Okay. So it's not like you just wake up and say you want to detox. Like I use the example of festive season. People are going to be loading themselves on, for example, Flagyl and tetracycline and thinking they're detoxing their system. Whereas
are those antibiotics themselves?
They're antibiotics.
Because those are very common, place, let me use that word, drugs that people just simply walk into pharmacies
and then again, we need to get to the point in this country where you don't just walk into, that's why in standardized countries, you don't walk into a pharmacy. They are called prescription-only medicines. And that's why when you get to places like standardized countries, you can't walk into pharmacy.
Are we going to get there? Are there plans for the Nigerian system to be like that? There are plans for the Nigerian
system to go there. Like I said, when you get to the pharmacy and you want to, people usually would almost force their doctors and pharmacists. You will hear people get to the hospital and say, give my son antibiotics. They're even telling the doctor what to prescribe. And then when you don't, you also want to prevent them from going, if you don't give it to them, they also go and find a way to get it elsewhere. So it's really a hard task trying to manage the patients from doing what is wrong and then keeping them to do what is right.
So how much are the authorities doing to educate people or bring them to the awareness that antibiotics are not to be used the way that we commonly think that they are?
Well, programs like this, sometime in December was also Antibiotic Awareness Week.
Oh, good. Very good.
So there were a lot of programs. You have pharmacists go all around to, sensitize people about the use of antibiotics and drug abuse generally.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's good.
And hopefully we'll get to the point in this country where you're not going to just walk into a pharmacy and say that you need an antibiotic or any drug and then you get it.
So if there's anything that we've gathered today is the fact that antibiotics are good, but you can't just pop antibiotics because they can become bad. They can destroy your liver is a kidney now. They can destroy your kidney and do much worse. They become resistant, or the bacteria becomes resistant if you use them just anyhow. So please,
and when you have to do that, when you have to use them, when doctor and pharmacists prescribe them to you, ensure that you complete your dose.
Yeah, remember now, complete your dose is very, very important.